Hey Huskies, it's Mr. Coward again. When we left off with solving one and two step equations. So now we're going to pick up with equations with a variable on both sides. So we have an example here, a 7x equals 4x plus 15. So our goal is still the same. We're still trying to solve for that variable, which is x here. So that's the letter in the equation. So we're trying to solve for that. So in order to solve for that, we have to get the x's on one side and the constants on the other. So we need to do some work to get that done. So our first step is still the same as we did before. We're still going to draw our line down. Next, what we do to one side, we still have to do to the other. So all of our rules that we've done before still apply. Nothing has changed on that. It's just kind of how we have to work it. Because we have a 7x over here and we have a 4x over here. So in order to solve for x, I have to get those together. To get those together, I need to move one of those to the other side. And we move it just like we did before. We move it with the inverse or the opposite operation. So I'm going to move the 4x to the 7x. This depends on the equations. You just have to look at it and figure out what makes the most sense for that equation. Sometimes it will be to move to the left, sometimes it'll be to move to the right. It doesn't matter. You can move them any direction and you will still get the same exact answer. So that doesn't matter what direction you choose. It's up to you. I'm not going to make you pick one over the other. So let's start out. We notice here this is a positive 4x. So since this is a positive 4x, I need to do the inverse of that. So I'm going to do minus 4x. So we're subtracting the whole thing, 4x from both sides. The only place my x can be subtracted from is another one with an x. So I have this 7x over here, so I can subtract 4x from that. So a positive 4x minus a negative 4, or not minus a negative, minus 4x is going to zero that out. So that becomes 0. I have a 15 left on this side. 7 minus 4 leaves me with 3x is equal to 15. So now I'm just like I was with a one-step equation. I'm just solving this inverse operations. So the first thing, remember, we're still trying to get the x by itself. We have our line drawn. This is telling us that this is multiplied. So it's 3 times x because it's side by side. So if that's 3 times x, the inverse of multiplying by 3 is going to be dividing by 3. So 3 divided by 3 leaves me with a x, just a 1x, and that's going to be equal to 15 divided by 3 is 5. So my equation, or my answer is x is equal to a 5 from this equation. So now let's look at another one. Let me get this off of here. All right, so let's say we had 5y minus 2 is equal to 3y plus 4. So the same process. We have to decide which direction we want to go with our variable. So I'm going to go to the right side. I went to the left earlier. I'm going to go to the right side because it doesn't really matter. So we're going to draw our line down. So I need to get my variables together first. That's my preference. I always want to try and get those together first and then move on from there. So I'm going to move this 5y. I keep touching something here. I'm going to move this 5y here over to the other side. So the inverse, the opposite of 5y or a positive 5y, is going to be minus 5y. So I have my minus 5y. Now I'm looking on this side here, and I'm wondering what I have to subtract it from. I can only subtract it from the one that has the same variable. So I had a y here, so I find the one with a y here, and I can subtract it from that. So I'm going to do minus 5y. These zero out. 5 minus 5 is 0. So I could bring down my negative 2. And that's going to be equal to 3 minus 5 would give me negative 2y. And then I've not done anything to the plus 4 yet. So I have my y's on the same side. I have a negative 2y. Now I need to get rid of that one that's just hanging on there, the one that's attached to it, that easiest one to get rid of. So I need to get rid of plus 4. So the inverse operation of my plus 4 is going to be minus 4. If I do it to one side, I've got to come over here to one without a variable. This is just my constant, so it doesn't have a variable. So I'm going to subtract 4. This zeroes out. I can bring down my negative 2y. Negative 2 minus 4 is negative 6. Now I'm back to that one-step equation. I need to get y by itself. So the inverse, remember this is multiplying 2 times y. So the inverse of multiplying would be to divide both sides by 2. Or negative 2, I'm sorry. So we cancel out our negative 2's and we're left with y is equal to 3. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 is 3. So that's one way to work that. Now, just so you kind of see what I was talking about on either side, you saw how we kind of did it on that side. We moved the 5y to the other side. So now let's do this the opposite direction. So I'm going to take my 3y and I'm going to move it over. So I'm going to go a little bit quicker because we've already worked this one out. If I can get my pen selected here. So I'm going to subtract 3y. And if I do it to one side, I've got to do it to the other. So now my 3y's zero out. So I'm left with a positive 4. And that's going to be equal to 5y minus 3y is 2y minus 2. My next step, still trying to get y by itself, so I'm going to inverse of 2, so I'm going to add 2. That zeroes out, leaves me with 2y is equal to 6. So the inverse of multiplying by 2 is to divide by 2. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So that leaves me with y is equal to 3. So you get the same answer. So it doesn't really matter which way you move your variable. You're going to get the same answer. As you work through these, as you do more equations in your life, you'll notice what direction makes more sense to go. But it really doesn't matter, because you can do it either way. You just want to make sure that you use the most mathematical sense possible once you kind of get accustomed to it. So let's look at our last one we're going to look at here. So we have 6z I don't know what happened. Let's see. Let's try this again. All right, so we have 6z minus 12 is equal to negative 8z plus 16. So I know my first step is I need to get my z's together. So we're going to draw our line down. I'm going to just move my negative z. I'm going to move this one to the other side. So that's going to be my first step. So the inverse of negative 8 is going to be a positive or a plus 8z. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I can only add or subtract my z's from the other z. I could not put this under the 12 because the 12 does not have a z. I have to put it under the 6. So we're adding 8z on this side. Now I look, this zeroes out. I can bring down my 16. 6 plus 8, or 6z plus 8z is 14z. Negative 12 or minus 12, I bring it down, and that's going to be equal to 16. So now we're back to working that two-step. So we want to get rid of the minus 12. So the inverse of minus 12 is the plus 12. So if we have plus 12 on this side, we have to have plus 12 on that side. What we do to one side, we do to the other. So we zero out our 12s, and we're going to bring down 14z is equal to 28. Now it's just like a one-step equation. We're going to divide both sides by 14. The reason we divide it is, remember, the 14 times z, the inverse of multiplying is dividing. So my 14s cancel out, and I'm left with z is equal to 2. So that is how we work our solving equations with variables on both sides. If you need to rewatch this video, go back through, pay attention, make sure you have your notes on it. And if you have any questions, email, let us know, and we will help you out as quickly as possible. I hope you have a great rest of your day.